Having your dreams comes true. It starts with the initial.
So God gives us dreams and visions and ideas.
People buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is leemooring, and welcome to MEA. That stands for Motivation, Encouragement, and Accountability. And this episode, we have a special guest. Each week, we're coming to you because we want you to achieve more, reach your potential, and ultimately, we want you to be your very, very best. So here at Motivation, Encouragement, and Accountability, we are going to bring a special guest each week. And this week, we have a phenomenal individual. We have the founder of Radiate Her. This platform is not only on Facebook, but she also has a thriving podcast called Her Talks Radio. She is known for her ability to uplift women and encourage them through their life's journey. Let's welcome Miss Karla Chapman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that nice welcome. It sounds so weird to hear somebody else introduce me. It's almost embarrassing. So thank you for that. I'm so honored to be on here. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with everybody.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. You know what? I'm excited to talk to you because I've been following you. I've been seeing everything that you do and the things that you have going on, and all your posts and everything that you have out there is just so encouraging to so many. And, you know, I can't praise you enough just because I see how God is using you. And I feel the love that you pour into all of your words and everything that you do, which is just so amazing.
Yeah.
So, you know what, I don't even know where to start. Okay, let's start here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Am I already supposed to feel like I'm about to tear up and we just started?
That's going to be my new goal. I'm getting tears from everybody.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm not going to go great into detail, but I just retired from the military a year ago. So I was in the Air Force for 20 years. And within that time frame, I was human resources in civilian terms. So I did a lot of people things. So throughout that time, I was in personnel. I did a lot of career mentoring, leadership, mentorship. I had lots of troops throughout that time, people I supervised. I also became an MRT, which is a master resilience trainer. So I did that. I did a lot of speaking to the young troops. I was always involved in something where I was helping somebody. And that's just something that I always loved to do while I was in.
Wow, that is amazing. And I can definitely tell that you've had experience helping people because it shows in every project that I see you do. You know, let's start talking about, you mentioned that you are MRT, a master resiliency trainer, and tell us about how learning that resiliency skill set, how was that beneficial in your interactions with others?
Okay, what I'm doing now. So first, I want to say that is actually how I met you.
That's true, right? That's training, yeah.
Yes. But I think being in the MRT course, what it did for me is just kind of open my eyes to what I already felt that God wanted me to do, but I wasn't sure how to use it. So ever since I was a child, you know, I went through childhood trauma and it just kind of followed me throughout my adult life. But I always had this thing about me where I still kept going. I still wanted to overcome. I still was always trying to figure out ways to wake up that next morning and be great.
Right.
So going into that course, it kind of gave me a structure of how to do it and how to deal with different people. And, you know, just knowing that everybody is not the same type of person. So I was able to, you know, have that experience with going out there and having these groups of diverse people where I could use those skills in different ways.
Right. You know what? I like what you talked about, and I'm going to go down this route for a second. When we talk about, you mentioned childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is so valuable is that throughout our lives, we go through trials and tribulations. and they're designed to make us stronger. And that's our testimony that we can share with others. So let's walk down there. Let's talk about that for a second. As you have gone through trials and tribulations, how has it helped you share your testimony? How has it helped you heal others? Because I think that's ultimately what I see from you, is that you are healing so many others by sharing.
Okay. I think what is the thing that I didn't know right away is that my story would help other people. Because for so long I thought I was by myself, because I had this thing where I would not share that part of me. So my voice was always silent. So just a little bit about my testimony. I was abused or molested by my stepfather when I was 6, and it went on for several years. Eventually I was pulled from the home, put into a foster home. Then my grandparents became my parents, and I stayed with them. But I eventually went back to my mother. And when I went back to my mother, my stepfather had gotten out of jail, so he lived back in the household with us. So from that point on, through high school, I stayed with them, and we just always had this thing about our family where we were looked at as the perfect family. So, you know, some of our family knew about it. A lot of people outside the house did not know about it, but I think living within that, I just had this mindset of everything had to be perfect all the time. So I just recently got my voice to where I could share those things. And then I noticed that when I started sharing it, it started helping other people release it. So I really feel like my story is a testimony, but also how I live, how I live and how I think and how I can still go on. I think that shows other people, like, you know, there is hope. I don't have to stay put in a box. I can still share my story and allow God to use it and to heal me at the same time.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
for
for
your
sharing
question.
that. Yes.
Okay.
You know, I'm glad you talked about, you mentioned finding your voice. How important is it for others not only to find their voice, but how can they go about that?
Okay, well, the only thing that I can do really is just share my truth. I'm not like a professional doctor or anything like that, but the way that I started with sharing it with somebody I trusted. That's really how it started initially. And then after that, I went to counseling. So some people, you know, you have to go to counseling. And I know within our community, it's looked at as an embarrassment, especially within my community, my household, because we have such strong women in our family. So to go out and seek help in that way, it almost has this, you know, it puts you in that box where you're looked at as weak. So I would say, you know, to go to counseling, to talk to somebody, and also to seek God. That has been my truest help out of everything, is seeking God and allowing him to speak through me and to help me. And I know it sounds cliche, you know, when people say, well, just pray about it. I do not like that phrase sometimes, just pray about it, because sometimes just praying about it, I believe that God puts resources there too. He puts other people to help you there, and, you know, doctors and things like that. But at the same time, he is my first choice. He is my first choice.
Amen. You know, I'm glad that you touched on that, because that's one of, I guess, my pet peeves as well, when people just say, oh, you should pray about it.
Yes.
There's more to it than that, because like you mentioned, God is going to put resources there. And we always think of prayer as just telling God what our problems are, but it's that relationship of being twofold, of hearing what God is saying to you. And when God, by him putting those resources there,
Amen.
It's not just by chance that you happen to bump into someone who works at a facility that specializes in X, Y, and Z, and they know that the person is taking on new clients.
Yes.
That's just not by chance. But I think I'm glad that you touched on that you don't just pray. There has to be an active engagement, that relationship of knowing exactly what God wants for you and which direction or which road you're supposed to go.
Yes. Can I share something?
Sure. Yeah.
I know you were saying, how important is it to use your voice? I just want to share the importance of it just based on my story. So for so long, I held in a lot of that trauma. I wasn't speaking out, and that trauma carried on to other things, to where I went into depression and anxiety, and now I have CPTSD. Just all that stuff in my body started responding to that. So I have a lot of chronic pain. I had to have a major surgery last year, and a piece of it was because of that trauma that happened long ago. Um, and it's just amazing, like you were saying, how God allows like that doctor to show up and all of a sudden they can help you, because that is my exact story. I went through from 6 years old until just 2018. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. And it just so happened that they found a specialist at that time who was about to fly in, and she helped. Like, it was like once I had that appointment, she knew exactly what was wrong with me, and then they began to fix it. So I'm just so thankful to God where he placed me at that moment.
Right.
So it's like a two-part story that I wanted to share, but yeah.
Right. But I'm glad you said that, especially because God knew when the moment was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, God knows the timing when our healing is supposed to come.
Yes.
And I believe that sometimes we're not ready.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're not ready, and it's about his timing. And we want to rush things. We're a microwave society where we want things right now in 30 seconds or less. But that's not how God intended. Sometimes we have to suffer a little bit longer. But then the Bible says we can count it all joy, and we can rejoice in knowing that his perfect will is going to be done. And so when he shows up and heals in the way that he and only he can, then our testimony is just that much bigger, and we're able to help and share with so many more people because of that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And please, while we're talking, if something comes to mind and you got to jump in there and get it out, just go ahead.
Okay.
So let's take a look at this. So what inspires you? We're here with motivation, encouragement, and accountability. So what inspires you? What motivates you? We talked about God, but what else is there?
Honestly, I know it's really other people. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times on those days where I felt like I couldn't do more or I was tired, God always showed up through somebody else who needed me.
Wow.
So I get my strength from helping other people. So I'll get that little message like, hey, I saw your post and it helped me out today. Or I'll get that text or that phone call. Or I'll see somebody at the grocery store to just walk up to me like, hey, it's just something about you. And just those examples make me feel like God still needs me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What comes to mind when you shared that is with the post the other day that you wrote about when you shared your book with me. Mm-hmm. And at that very time when you posted saying something about you're trying to finish your book the next day, and I said something like get off Facebook and go do it. And then when you sent your book over the next day, it was so funny because I was at the very moment writing. In the last page of your book, it talks about releasing things. And I was in the process of writing letters to all the people that I had some issues with. And it was so amazing how God shows up in his timing with everything. And I'm a firm believer of confirmation and affirmation. And so when that happened, it just blessed me tremendously, because I'm like, okay, God, I see that I'm walking in your will. It just wasn't by chance that you sent over your book. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And thank you for sending me that message, because I think a lot of times we feel it in our gut to reach out to somebody and say or share, and then we don't do it. But by that encouraging you, your message encouraged me, because I'll just say I was in my feelings about that book. And I was just like, who the devil just started working. And he was like, who's going to really read this? Who's going to really listen to you?
Right.
The book is free, so it must not be that special. So when I got that message from you, that was confirmation for me to keep writing and keep going. So I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. What I find amazing is how you started in the beginning, that it's all about one person. And so many times we put things out there, and what'll happen is we're in this like society, this like mentality, where we put something on Facebook, how many likes does it get? And it's not about that. Sometimes you can have people reading your message and never like it whatsoever. But you just have to know, you have to be obedient to God. When God says, write this and post this and put this out there, it's for some person, at least one person.
Yes.
And so sometimes, it's just like the Bible talks about, some people will water, some people will plant, but God gives the increase. And we never know what we're watering and what we're planting, but God will give the increase and it will come. And it's great that when we get that little note that says thanks, that just kind of warms our heart and keeps us going to the next level. Yeah. Thank you for that. So you talk about helping other people, and where do you see what God has for you? Where do you see it going? What's the next level?
Ooh, I wasn't ready for that question. Honestly, I want to get on here and just say all these big, amazing things. But if I do that, I honestly feel like that would be my answer. And right now I'm in this process, like currently right now in this process where I am being intentional about hearing God's voice with my vision, because I feel a lot of times within these few years, I've made my own self tired because I was trying to do everything myself. And he didn't even ask me to do it.
Right.
So going into this year, I know what I have planned, but I'm also asking God at the same time, is this really what you want me to do? Do you want me to do it? Do you want me to do it now? Do you want me to take it off the list? Like, when is this supposed to come? So I see where he has me, and I know it's still in the field of helping people. But I really don't know at what level yet.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Fair enough. So you mentioned list. Are you a list person? What's the importance? What do lists do for you?
Well, I would say I'm into lists because I'm very OCD, so I need to have things written down, but also it helps me prioritize things and not to have like an anxiety attack just based on, like, if it's only in my head, I'm freaking out. But if I put it on the list and I have a chance to look at, okay, is this serving other people? What is this doing for me? I can just put little notes next to it, and then I also can check it off as I go. And those are wins for me. So if I'm checking things off, I feel like, okay, I'm good. I can move on to the next thing. So it keeps me aligned.
I like that. I'm glad that you mentioned that, especially keeping you aligned. I know that I'm not so much a list person. I'll do to-do list tomorrow and whatever. But recently I've read that, studying up on the importance of making a list for tomorrow before you go to bed.
Yes.
And so you're programming your subconscious to start thinking about it. And when you wake up, you are immediately you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you can jump right into it. And I've noticed from experience that when I write a list, I'm productive the next day. When I don't write a list, sometimes I'll walk around the house aimlessly until about 11 or 12 o'clock,
I've been there.
not knowing what I want to do. And I believe also in the power of the list, because if you have all these thoughts going in your head, you can't organize very well.
And honestly, it's really hard to hear God when you got all that stuff going on too. It
Right.
really is.
Exactly. He's gonna give you. It's funny because I got out of the shower the other day. They said in your car, in the shower, and there's one other place is where you get all these ideas. So you need to keep a pen and paper, nearby. So I got out of the shower the other day, and I'm like scrambling to grab something to write down because of all these thoughts. So yeah, I definitely believe in the importance of writing things down.
Yes.
Yeah,
Me
in
too.
the list. So speaking of writing things down and the future, so let's talk about Ephesians 4 and 2
Hmm.
and what it exactly speaks to you. Because I saw that you
Okay.
wrote that.
Where did you see this at?
I do my research.
Okay, I love Ephesians, just period. Just to give background, it's the letter that Paul wrote to the Ephesian church. And, I'm still kind of learning the words, so I just know some bits and pieces, but I know that he wrote that letter kind of to, I guess, empower them, inspire them, to keep them going towards God as he was away. So I know in Ephesians 4 and 2, it talks about just being everything you do to be humble, be kind. Am I right? I'm right.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So that speaks to me in so many ways because I feel like that is truly my heart. I always try to make sure that I don't think of myself. I don't want to say different because we're all different, but better than anybody, no
Right.
matter what levels we're at, because we all start somewhere.
Mhm.
We all do. So if I see someone on the side of the road asking for money or anything like that, it's not up to me to judge why they're on the road or why they're asking for what they're asking for. If God is telling me to give to them, I'm going to give to them.
Mhm.
Just period. Because I don't know what their life has been like, as they don't know who I am. So I just want to make sure that I always operate in that space, and anything that I'm doing, that I do it out of love. And I'm very humble because I help people.
Mhm.
I help people, and I need those people to know that I understand and I have a story too.
Right.
So I always want to stay relatable.
Mhm. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad we talked about this because being there for others, and like you said, that with you helping people and going in addressing any person in any situation, there are different ways that you can approach them.
Yes.
But if you go with, I'm a firm believer, if you go with the love of Christ with you,
Yeah.
that it will be received.
Yes. I believe that too. And it's also your testimony, how you go up to a person. Like, you don't even have to tell them your story, but if they feel that, it speaks to them as well.
Mhm.
So I'm just all about that inclusion. And I know in Ephesians, if you read more into it, like if you read the whole book of Ephesians, there's a part in there that talks about how God already adopted us into his family. And that's really special to me personally, just because of the background that I have.
Mhm.
So I try to be that same example and to let everybody know, like, I have that same trauma as you have. I didn't grow up with a dad. I didn't even realize who my real dad was until like 4 years ago.
Mhm.
So just knowing, like, even though he wasn't there, I still have a father.
Right.
And I just want to present that to everyone too. Like, hey, I know how you feel, but we're already adopted as children. There's somebody we can laugh with, cry with, ask questions to. Like,
Mhm.
so I just want to be that example.
Wow. What it makes me think of when you talk about adoption and how you address people, that person on the street, it's almost like I envision you adopting them
Yeah.
in that, I can relate to you and you're not in this alone.
Hmm.
And people, I think that so many times they think that they're in a situation alone, but when they know that someone cares, in essence, you're adopting them.
Yes. That's beautiful. I didn't even think of it like that.
You said it, not me. So, I lost my train of thought now. Okay, we're going to get back. Okay, so let's talk about your book.
Okay.
Your book is Release This Year According to Me,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about it.
I did not even know that I was going to write that book until the last day of my retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So it really wasn't an idea that I had. Someone spoke it to me, and I feel that was God. So once they said it to me, I was like, okay, God, I see what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to work. That's really what I did. I had no idea what I was going to say or write about. I just sat down and I wrote it. But the idea behind it is just a glimpse of what I went through in 2019. I started the year with this big word called release. And, going into that word, I was so motivated. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to release everything that held me bondage and this and that. But really what happened, God started to reveal things in my life that I had forgotten about, things that weren't good about myself. But he also released me from some people, some relationships, from things like anger, unforgiveness, all types of stuff. So that book is just a glimpse of some of my journal entries
Mm-hmm.
and then my thoughts behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that release.
Mm-hmm.
So you were released from some situation, released from some people. Let's talk about your thoughts of how important you think that is for everybody else who's in some type of bondage, whether it be with people, situations, things from the past that they need to relieve. How important is that?
I feel like it's very important because if you're bound by something, it's hard to do what your purpose to do. So, for example, if you're in a relationship that you know for sure is toxic, or a relationship that you should not be in, or doing a certain situation that you shouldn't be doing, that person can keep you from doing what you're doing or what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And I just know this just from my own experience. I was actually in a very toxic relationship, and I didn't even know it until I was away from that person, because what they did, it kind of actually caused me to do those same things that they were doing, and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I spent lots of days, lots of months, lots of years missing out on what God had for me. So I had to keep going around in a circle. So that's how important it is, because when you don't jump on that, I guess on that bus or whatever you want to call it that God has for you,
Mm-hmm.
it just goes around, and then you got to wait for some more years to get back on, because if you're not going to do it, God's going to find somebody to do it. It's not to say that you can't go back to do it, but you just created, a longer timeline.
Right. It's interesting because what comes to mind is the Israelites when they were in the desert.
Yes.
They were walking around for 40 years, and
Yes.
it should have just took them, a month?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so we get caught up in that cycle. And what's that? The definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yes.
But we get caught up in that cycle. So how does it feel once that release comes?
Okay, I want to say it feels good, but I'm going to tell you the truth. That is the truth. But I'm going to tell you the truth before the truth. So the truth before the truth is that sometimes it does not feel good,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you already have found your comfort zone within it.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be comfortable in that situation, or you could be comfortable with not forgiving somebody because now you don't have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it all starts to surface up, you got to start dealing with those emotions, because that's really how you heal and release from it. You deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just say, hey, this is how I feel. No, you dig deep into it, and it does not feel good. Mm-hmm. But on the outside of that, it feels wonderful.
Right. On the other side, in the promised land, when you get there,
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
And this wasn't on one question. I'm just coming out of nowhere.
Oh, no.
I know that based on me writing those letters and putting them on the altar and releasing all those situations, now, because I wrote and said everything that I needed to say, I cannot even remember details of what it was that made me mad. And it's almost like when I tried to even now afterwards, this was just maybe 11 days ago. Now I kind of look at it as God closed that door and there's a lock on it. And I went over there and tugged on the door and I couldn't open it.
Mm.
It was that gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the things that you have released completely, do you have a similar feeling where you can't even remember what
Right.
the details were? It's just gone. It's God took it and it's off.
It's like you want to be mad or you want to feel a certain way, but it's like, no, or you don't even remember what that situation is. So yes, and to me, that's almost a reflection of the way that God forgives us, where it's just like you're clean, like you're white clean. So I will say that I have dealt with that, but there are some situations that I've been released from, and I've tried to do it in that way, but that's not the way that God wants me to do it. So I have to go to those certain people and say what it is, because like I have a different perspective about it, because I remember there was a point where I was saying things like, I don't want to go to that person and talk to them about it because it may be ugly or this and that, but sometimes that person don't even know.
Right.
So I have to give them a chance to apologize to me, and that's just for me. But some things I was able to just release and never turn back. Never turn back. And that feels good.
Right. But some people, like you said, you got to go in love.
Yes.
With God, with God along with you. Sometimes, but people don't realize it. You can't just go, you can't just go saying whatever you want to say to a person. I was in a class yesterday and the topic was about getting past limitations. And one of the things that they said is that in situations, as you leave situations, you can't just blow them up.
That's right.
Or you can't just blow up that bridge or burn it down or in that situation. And so in having those difficult conversations, if you're prayed up and you do it in God's timing, he's going to show up
right
and give you the words that we need to say.
That's right.
Because if we go in there with our feelings, what are we going to do?
Exactly. Fight.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We taking off earrings and everything else. Right. And it's going to make the situation worse. Now you got 2 or 3 issues rather than just one.
Right. Now you got charges along with that.
Right. Now, exactly. And then you're like, God, how did I get in this place? And
that's right.
He's going to look at you and say, hey, you got there yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to address real quick. Let's talk about this retreat that you had. Because I'm excited. I saw it and I wanted to invite, but I didn't fit the demographic.
No men allowed.
Right. No men allowed. But what was this all about?
It was just, I really feel it was something that God placed in my heart some years ago, but I didn't think that I could do it because I didn't have enough money, because I didn't know the right people. I had never led anything like that. So last year, going through that release process, it also included me releasing some of my thoughts and the things that were the limiting factors.
Right.
And realizing that I could do anything with God. And he will use the smallest. I mean, come on now. You can have nothing and he still will provide. Right. So after I started thinking like that and getting into my word, I just made this decision. You know what? I'm going to do the retreat. So I started coming. I don't recommend this, by the way. I started coming up with it like 2 months in advance. It was a lot of work, but nothing that I regret. It was so worth it.
So let's backtrack just a second.
Okay.
So just explain to the listening audience exactly what it was.
Okay, I was getting there.
Okay.
So it's actually just a glimpse of what the podcast is in live form.
Okay.
So on the podcast, I always talk about making sure that women feel safe, that they feel safe in an environment. You know, we can come together, we can talk, we can share our traumas, our true stories, we can cry together, laugh together. And I had this idea, or God gave me this idea some years ago, to have a retreat that was small. So if you go to my Instagram page, that's in there where it says small circle but big heart. I love small circles. And I think the reason I love small circles is because I'm an introvert. I love people in numbers, but I have to refuel myself when I'm in big crowds. I have to go away and be by myself. So the thought was, okay, I want to create something very intimate because I know what it feels like to be out there and just start using your voice. So I wanted to make sure that these women had a place that they can come to and feel comfortable, even if they didn't know anybody. So that's really where it came from. So at the retreat, it was 10 women. We had 10 women there. I had a guest speaker. We did yoga. We had some ministry going on, some worship, and then we celebrated my birthday. It was just a really, really good time. I think there was a lot of healing that started within that retreat. A lot of friendships started there. It was just really a good time and a glimpse of what I know for sure that God wants me to do later.
Amen. Yeah. So by you saying that, so in the future, we will see more retreats open to more women.
Yes, there will be a retreat this year. I just haven't put it out there yet because I am waiting on God to give me the details on it.
Right. Amen. Amen. That sounds like an awesome event. You know, I saw the picture and I saw the birthday cake. That was amazing.
Yes.
So it looked like you all had a great time.
We did. It was something I will never forget. It was amazing.
Wow. Well, I look forward to seeing some more, and maybe you'll have a men's retreat. And
be on the lookout because that is on the list.
You know what? It's so interesting as I talk with my friends how women seem to just, hey, I got an idea, and then they just get their girlfriend involved and like 2 other 3 girlfriends. Next thing you know, it's like 20 women doing something, and then they're in this conference with thousands of women. Man, we
y'all better get it together.
Yeah, we need to get it together, hopefully. Wow. So we have retreats coming up. We have any more books coming out soon?
Yes, actually. Yes. Okay. So this month, I will be featured in the Brilliant Awakening magazine. So that comes out in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And next month, I'll be in volume 2 of the Brilliant Awakening book.
Okay.
So I did volume 1 a few years back. So now we're doing volume 2.
Okay.
I'm actually working on my own book, which is really scary because I'm so used to being in a book with other women.
Right.
So this will be the first time where it's just me. And I'm a little nervous about it, but I think I'm nervous about it because I think when we get those jitters, it's what we should be doing. Right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. What else do I have? The podcast, of course, that's still going on. I've actually been on a break from the podcast since October because I had to get quiet on that for a little bit.
Okay. And this is the podcast here, Her Talks Radio.
Yes, Her Talks Radio. There's a story behind the radio part that I'll have to share. So a lot of people say, is it a radio station or is it a podcast? It's actually a podcast, but the radio is just me speaking life into it because my goal is to eventually be on the radio or have my own radio station.
Oh, wow.
I love having that platform for other people to share. So that's why I do the podcast as well. so people can share their stories. But eventually, I would love to get to that place where I have my show, but I can have other people there to have their shows as well
Right.
that kind of do the same thing, in the field of healing and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, when you get your radio station, I just need a little office back in the corner somewhere. I don't need a major. I don't even need a window. Just a little office back in the side.
Well, you look like you already have a radio station, so we might be able to work this out.
There we go. God is working it out.
Mm-hmm. So with that being said, like I said, I'm still going to do the podcast. My first show of this year will be next week. So be on the lookout for that. But a lot of different things come into the podcast this year. Last year it was just women. And I had this vision last year to have men on it, and I didn't do it. So this year there will be men on it in different types of ways. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay. So podcast, once again, you can see that here, Her Talks Radio, and then also your Facebook group.
Yes, Radiate Her. So that Facebook group is actually connected to my Instagram page, Radiate_her. And all the information is pretty much the same. Every now and then I'll get on there and I'll put some different things, just sharing my story. But the group is just really to vent, to share, to inspire. If anybody ever wants to put anything out there, you're more than welcome, but you can come through there to ask me questions about collaborations or anything like that.
So based on the theme for this group, motivation, encouragement, and accountability, what are your thoughts on accountability? What are some things that you use to keep yourself accountable, or that might be beneficial to others?
Okay. I would say the first thing that I do is to make sure that I'm always honest with myself. Because if I'm not being honest with myself, that means I'm not really being accountable. So that's where it starts for me. And to also tell someone, I have only one friend that I confide in as far as helping people in my ministry and things like that. I go to that person because that's a person that I know who's going to give me godly advice, love, true feedback, and let me know, if I said something that may have not been said in love, things like that. So I use her as my accountability partner. And I also, as you know, I love to write things down. So when I write things down, that's holding me accountable as well, because if I look at it and I see that I'm not doing those things, it's like, okay, what's the reason why I'm not doing things? Right. Like, what is it that's stopping me from doing it? So maybe I have to, revisit that list or revisit my daily to-do schedule or things like that. So that is definitely how I hold myself accountable. That way, in affirmations. I have affirmations posted up everywhere in my house. They're on my mirror. They're on my refrigerator. They're downstairs. They're in my little room. And it's not really accountability to tell me to go do a certain thing, but it keeps me accountable in knowing who I am. So I keep a lot of scriptures posted and just like different motivational quotes and things like that.
Okay. Wow. I like that. I've never tried that.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that story. What's that?
It works. Believe me. At first, it seems kind of weird, especially if you're going to repeat what those things say. So that's what I do. Like when I open the fridge, I have a list. I have to show you a picture one day, but there's sticky notes on the fridge, but I also have scriptures. And then I have Ephesians 1 and 2 on there, because in those chapters, it pretty much tells you who you are in God. So I have those. So I read them all the time. I say it out loud. When I'm in my mirror upstairs, I say those things out loud. And sometimes it feels weird when you don't truly believe it. But after a while, you start to pick up on it like, hey, okay.
Right. So, by constantly being exposed, you're constantly feeding your spirit in a positive fashion.
Yeah.
Wow. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody watching, write down some scripture, some positive messages, and put them around the house. And every time you see them, repeat them.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So you mentioned an accountability partner. What advice would you give as far as someone finding the right accountability partner?
Oh. Make sure it's someone you trust. Make sure you pray about it first before you select that person. Because sometimes we trust people, but there's always something that we don't know. God hears things that we don't hear. So you make sure that's the person. They could be someone you trust. They can be your friend, but that doesn't mean that they're supposed to be your accountability partner.
Right.
And make sure it's someone who's giving you godly advice and not just advice.
Right. Yeah.
You know, when it comes to doing God's work or your purpose or anything like that, that's going to improve your life, you want to make sure you have the right person in the circle. And a lot of times we have these people that we've known for so many years. And even though their advice seems very lovingly or loving, those words may not have power behind them, the things that they say.
Right.
And words are so important. They can destroy. So just, yeah, those are some tips as far as that.
Amen. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to wrap this up. And do you have any closing comments, words of advice, some wisdom?
I have to think of this as if I was on the podcast because I always like to leave a little something.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you want to leave? Just a little nugget for them, or you can drop a boulder if you want.
I would say going into 2020, just be very clear about the things that you ask for. And that's something that I wrote about just recently. And I was talking about how we choose these words. Like I chose release last year, but I had no idea what was behind that word. So when you're in prayer or when you're doing anything, just make sure that you're intentional about it. You think about it first, you pray about it, and you sit still for a moment and hear from God before you even act and do it. So that's one nugget I want to leave. And the other nugget is to seek healing. To seek healing and believe that you have healing. I think a lot of times we say things like, I want to be healed and I want this and that. And the truth is we already have healing. You just have to have faith that you have it and you have to go out and seek it. So, yeah.
Man. See, now I want to go down that road with you for a second. Seek healing and believe that you have it. Wow. Those are some good parting words. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we are going to wrap things up. And once again, thank you. Thank you, Karla, for coming out and sharing some knowledge, some words of inspiration. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Once again, we have, she has a podcast, Her Talks Radio, as well as Radiate her Facebook group, and there's a book. How do they get your book?
So on the book, it's the actual link is on my Instagram page. So you can go to my personal Instagram, which is KC_Happy Life. And the link is on there.
KC_Happy
Life.
Happy Life. Okay. So is that it?
Yes. It's a little K, little C, but that's fine. And then that's my personal one, but the Radiate Her one is Radiate_her, all small letters. And that's also on the link. The link is also on that page.
Okay. So we go out here and you can get her book. You'll see the link. So go out and get the book and you will definitely, your life is going to be changed because there's some things in this book that you need to have a hold of, especially the ending, because that was such a blessing to me. So go out there and get the book. All right. So thank you all for tuning in to this episode. We really appreciate your time. Once again, Karla Chapman out here just blessing us. We appreciate it. Motivation, encouragement, and accountability, where we want you to achieve more, reach your potential in order to be your very best. We will talk to you soon. God bless.